Hello coders, today we're going to be talking about web development recruitment. I'm joined by Jeremy Onion, the technical director at the Torpedo Group, and he's also been doing some recruitment. Jeremy, how are you doing? Have you had a good week?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Had a very good week. Busy, always busy at our place, and actually been interviewing today.
Awesome.
So recruitment's very fresh in my mind at the moment.
That is awesome. That is awesome. That's why we got you on, because we want to pick your brains about recruitment from your side of the table. And we're going to be talking about all the things that you look for and identify when it comes to CVs. We're going to talk about interviews and all of that other good stuff. But before we start, I just want to say that Jeremy Onion has been on this show before. So what I would like everybody to do is just hit pause, go to the show notes, click on that link, watch that video, then come back here and then press play, because then you'll get a full background as to Jeremy Onion and his story, becoming a coder, and then moving into management. But now you're back here, let's talk about recruitment. So, what is it that you look out for when it comes to recruitment? When it comes to recruiting someone, what is the key fundamentals that you look out for?
So the two kind of things that I'm looking for at the various stages in the application process. So if we look initially with a CV, the key things I'm probably looking for is experience with a technology stack. And that's probably comes more from the types of businesses people have been working in and the types of projects they've done, not just this, list of skills you've got at the very beginning. But also the kind of the times they've worked with companies and the sort of areas they've worked with as well. So, right. Maybe the industries, education to some extent, if it's quite a junior role, but as you progress, you've done a few jobs or you've done a few years on the job, I think education kind of becomes a bit more secondary, and it's more about the types of work you've been doing. Right. So that's probably the initial bit from the CV and the introduction level. When you start to go through the process more, I'd say it's probably more about personality, attitude, and things like that, because some of the technical stuff, we'll come on to this a bit when we go through more of the later process, but some of the technical skills, they're obviously important, particularly in, when I'm recruiting for something like a developer role or something like that. However, there could be differences between the way people do certain things in certain frameworks, or they may have knowledge of one framework and not another. So those skills can either be transferred or upskilled. So that at that point it becomes less important, I should say. So
I guess from your perspective, then, from sitting on your side of the table, it's a job of investigating and discovery to discover what candidate best suits your requirements.
Yes.
And you're looking upon it from both a technical perspective. So are they technically competent to a level that you're after, but also, as you said, that they have a personality that matches your needs of the team. So let's take a step back and go through the actual process. So if someone was to say, you're recruiting right now, right? So if someone was to go on your job advert and then send their CV to you, is that how it works?
Yeah. If you come in direct, then we have adverts on various boards as well as on the site. So send in a CV and preferably some sort of cover letter as well.
Okay. And what is it? What are the things that you look out for on the CV and the cover letter? Are there any kind of real points that grab you when you assess those documents?
Yeah, definitely. So having a cover letter is it's not a necessity, but it will sort of help raise your profile with the application. It shows that you've actually taken the time to think about what you're doing. Normally, it'll give you some sort of background as to why you're applying for the job, which you don't get from the CV, and what it is about this role that piqued your interest, basically. Because as we're offering, a role to someone, but, we need to understand, where, as early as we can, what it is that they're offering to us and why it is that they're picking us as someone to go and work for. Okay. Because it's not a given. You're going to want to come and work for us. You could have an idea of, I want to work for this type of business, that type of business. So, what is it about us that interests you enough to, send in your CV and say that you want to come and work for us. From the CV type of thing, this is kind of your initial, your opening gambit to us. So there, like I said, I'm looking at what sort of technical competencies are you working with, the types of technology you use, the skills area that most people have on their CVs are useful to some extent, but again, a lot of that should be within your employment history, and for me, I tend to focus a bit more on that and understanding, what sort of roles have they been doing, where have they been working, what sort of skills have they picked up there, and things like that. The personal statement is also can be quite useful because it'll give you a flavour of how the candidate views themselves, so what they think their strengths are and how they think that they do as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so that's them sort of assessing themselves and reviewing themselves over. I mean, what is the format of a personal statement? Is it a series of bullet points or is it a paragraph? It varies.
It varies very much. Some people have just a short bit of spiel about themselves. It kind of explains I'm a, So for me, it would probably be something along the lines of, I'm a technical director. I've got 20 years of experience in development, and I've worked in XYZ industries for these types of companies. I'm seeking a role that will allow me to whatever. Okay. So just a very short summary that kind of sums up what your proposition for me is, what it is that you've got that you can bring to the table that makes you someone that I should sit up and take notice about. So that's the sort of thing that you want to try and get there. If you want to do it with bullet points, that's absolutely fine. But I think with a lot of things, a narrative actually works better. You tell a story. You give this is where I am. This is who I am. This is what I can offer. Make it a bit interesting.
I see. Yeah. But certainly not a novel or anything like, a huge book of your life. It's not.
No. You need to keep it short and snappy. One good technique for that is it's good for technical writing anyway, is if you assign $100 to each word. And then imagine you actually have to spend $100 for each word that you put on there. It's amazing how quickly you can cut that down to less words and still get the same meaning across.
I should do that with my social media advertising. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you've got your personal statement, you got your cover letter.
Yep.
Let's focus on the CV, because I know that is something that I get quizzed about a lot about, how do I format my CV? What should I include? What shouldn't I include? Should I add images? What format should it be in? The crazy questions that I've had, and I've seen CVs that are like works of art, as in you could hang them on a wall because they look so good, but they don't actually explain the person.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's break that down. So with a CV, what should you include? What are the top priority things that you need to include in a CV?
Okay, so I would say the two key things that you need to get across with your CV is your skill set and your employment history. And one thing I see a lot on CVs that I really don't understand is people will put in their employment history and give very little detail as to what they did in those jobs. So they'll mention a firm, so that they might say, I worked for Joe Blogs Marketing down the road. Great. What did you do there? And it'll just be work with WordPress or, work with a CMS system. That really doesn't give me anything to go on as to, where your skill set lies, what you're actually doing, what your experience is from working there. Right. Whereas if you said, we used to work with this type of industry and we did sites for, you don't even necessarily need to name clients. I work in an agency. There's a lot of NDA. Sometimes you're just not allowed to say who it is, but you can name the industry. You can talk about the type of project that it was. It was a portal. It was a landing page. Give some information about the sort of things you've achieved while you've been doing that. Don't bother with jobs that are completely outside the remit of the either the type of job you're going for or the industry you're in. So, for example, I used to collect glasses in a pub when I was in college. Nobody needs to know about that. Nobody wants to know about that anymore. I did, I was, when I first started, I was an IT assistant. Nobody really needs to know about that anymore. I leave the actual job on there so that it shows, this is when my employment started and this is my progression. But I don't bother with any of the, the things I did on there anymore because that's not relevant to the roles I'm going for now or the type of work I do now.
Well, I guess from that level, there is a cutoff point, isn't there? Where you just you list it so they are aware that you've done it, but you don't go into any detail as to what you were doing on a typical day to day. No. But particularly as a hiring manager, my time is limited. I may have 20 candidates to shortlist through the CVs. So I just want to know about the stuff that's relevant to the role I'm advertising and the role you're going for, not stuff that, not the fluff that you did before. We can cover that off at later stages if necessary. So unless there's something you've done that you think is either transferable or actually brings something extra to the role you're going for. Right. Maybe that you were working in a completely different industry, but there was an experience you had there that might lend itself to what you're doing, in which case, include it. But try and tailor your CV to the role you're going for as well. Okay. Right. So if I was to, so you shouldn't carpet bomb companies with CVs left, right, and center that are all the same?
I would say probably not. I prefer to read about stuff that's relevant to the role I'm offering. Yeah. So if you've been, if you're going for a developer role, you've done some digital marketing and you've done some pay-per-click campaigns and you've run things like that. I don't need to know about that. Okay. The fact that you've just got a generic listed everything on, to me as a hiring manager means that you are literally that. You're carpet bombing. You're spray and pray. You're not actually invested in the role that I'm offering. So why would I need to feel invested in trying to get you through the process when there might be someone else who's got a CV and a really nice cover letter that's tailored really well. Even if it's just tailored to the industry, it might not be tailored to me, but they might be going for agency work anyway, and therefore it shows an effort on the part of the candidate.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. It's I do feel though that it's a slightly different game when you're just coming into the industry, so you've never done web development before, or you've done web development, but you're just getting into the industry, because that is more. I don't want to. This is going to sound awful, but I think that there is more of a numbers game in the sense of the more exposure you have to companies, the better. But that does put an awful lot of overhead on if you're tailoring everything, creating everything to those companies. However, when you're saying that, though, on the other hand, when you are at a level, you're more choosy as to who you're going for.
Well, what I would say to that is that when you are first starting out, there isn't a lot of experience you've got. So therefore, you do need to put these extra things in to fill up a bit. So you're not going to have five or six companies where you're worrying about what's on there. It's there is where you really need to start thinking cleverly about, right, I haven't got a lot of experience in web development necessary. What can I show that, shows that I've got relevant skills that I can bring to this? And it may be, well, I used to work in a shop where I was dealing with complaints a lot. So I'm used to dealing with people, understanding what they need and finding ways to resolve. I've got problem solving skills. I've got, the communication skills. A lot of things that aren't necessarily web development specific, but they show you've actually got something to bring to the table yourself. So, it's about being inventive and, a bit clever about that. But I agree. If you're just starting out, you've not got a lot on the CV, you do need to pad it out with information that may be useful. But at the other end of the scale, like you said, when you're getting to a point where you're picking and choosing, although you probably find at that point you're not looking for jobs, they're actually looking for you. But yeah, there you have got the opportunity to tailor things a lot more. But I think doing a basic cover letter, just saying something about, I saw your advert in X, I've looked at your company, I find it really interesting. You work with, or you do this, do that. I'd really be interested in, applying for a position. Something like that should only take you about 10, 15 minutes to do, but it will up your chances quite significantly, because it really does show that you've taken an interest in the role. And so from my point of view, I'm more likely to then spend a bit more time looking at the CV and working out the fit than if it's just a blanket, a standard generic, 2-pager that really doesn't tell me much.
Yeah. I totally get that. I guess it's all about being invested in the company that you're trying to go for, right? It's showing some it's showing that you're showing some interest effectively. It's just showing that I'm not just sending you a CV that I should give to everybody. I'm actually taking a little bit of time just to give you, just to give it a little bit extra thought, a little bit of extra attention, because that's the sort of thing that a hiring manager will also look at is, well, he's gone the extra mile there, so therefore when we got work on, he'll go the extra mile for that, because he's that type of person, or she's that type of person. I don't mean to generalize on the gender there. So I is it those things that really stand out and
I'd say they help.
They definitely
help.
Okay, let's flip it around the other way. Is there anything that you look at on a CV and then just go, nope, that's not happening. That is just not happening here. Is there anything you just dismiss?
Poor spelling.
Okay.
Most definitely. I looked at one recently where someone has misspelled developer. Yes. So, I didn't bother reading much more of that one. And things where there are obvious gaps or holes, or something doesn't add up. So I've had a CV in the past, someone applying for a PHP developer or web developer role. PHP was one of the essential skills that we had on the advert. There was no mention of PHP on their CV at all.
Oh.
And it's sort of like, if you're a junior just coming into the industry and, you can explain it by, I've got the HTML, I've got the CSS, I want to learn the next step. That's fair enough. But this was a normal PHP web developer role where PHP was an essential on there, including oops and things like that.
Yeah.
No mention of it. And I'm thinking, you're right. You either didn't read the advert properly or you're just carpet bombing. So again, that you discount that straight away.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, they're big. I mean, I'm rubbish at spelling, absolutely rubbish at spelling, as you've probably seen my tweets and all sorts of stuff where I'm having to then delete the tweet and then upload the tweet, and then I've realized that it's been seen by so many people. I've got to the stage now where I just sort of, at some point, I'll just leave them for comedy value.
In fairness, there's that paperclip. In Word, if you're a Word user, it does know how to spell. This is the thing. If it's tweets or if it's an email or something like that, you can forgive the occasional odd misspelling. But when it's something as important as a CV, if they're not showing care and attention to how they're advertising themselves, because that's what you're doing with a CV. You are literally marketing yourselves.
Definitely.
If you haven't got attention to detail there, how does that feed through into to other things that they do? And that's where a hiring manager's mind will go. Well, if they do this here, what are they going to do over here? If I employ them, what's their code going to be like?
That's true. Because
they can't proofread and check their own CV.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want it to come across that all programmers spell like brilliantly, because we don't. Half of our bugs are because of spelling errors. Or half of mine anyway.
Some comments I've read have been howlers, mate. And same with merge requests. You can get some really interesting stuff. I've seen a couple of times where people have commented code, there's a typo in there. And then underneath they commented, I've left that in because it's just so funny. You get some real screamers. But there are a lot of tools out there to help you to actually, both check grammar and to check your writing. And also, I understand, and if somebody's sending in a CV in a second language, and there are some slight issues with the way they've worded things. I understand. I haven't got a problem with that. It's particularly interesting when I see German ones, because I do speak a bit of German, so I understand a lot about how things are structured. And you sometimes you read it and you think, yeah, that's German, or that's a German derived language, because you can see why they've made the mistake they've made. So it's not always an absolute no-no if there are slight issues with the CV. It doesn't have to be War and Peace.
But if you
perfectly translated,
if you spell developer wrong, that's it.
Exactly. Yeah, there are things that are just unforgivable, and that would be one of them.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. So we've talked about the CV. And we've talked about the structure of that CV. How long should that CV be? Because, I mean, should it be like 2 pages, 3 pages? Do you even care how long it should be?
I'd say probably 2 to 3 pages should be enough. If it's a lot shorter, then unless you are literally just out of college and looking for your first role, you're probably not selling yourself well enough. You've probably got more experience than you realize, and you really need to think about, okay, what else can I put in here that might be relevant or might show transferable skills?
Sure.
If it's 4 or 5 pages long, you're probably including too much fluff. You're probably detailing every single role you've had and every single responsibility you had in that role, and that's probably too much. Like I said, as hiring manager, I've probably got 20 CVs to go through, or I'm doing this in between meetings and things like that. So I need to have there's a reason why you always have an executive summary on the beginning of a report. It's because I need to be able to just go flick through it and understand, where I think this candidate is. And it really is your initial shop window. It's where you're marketing yourself. So I need to be wowed, or at least happy that this is someone worth investigating further at a quick pass of, what's on there. Yeah. So education is worth putting on there, so there's some indication, of what you've done. Although, like I said, as your career history is the most important thing. It's nice to see about hobbies, but that really doesn't worry me too much. That helps towards giving an idea of your sort of personality.
Sure. Okay.
So if you like playing football in long walks, and lots of sporty type things, then I can build up kind of a mental image of the sort of thing you might be. If you're heavily into music or Netflix and chill or what have you, that will give me some indication of where your interests lie, and that sort of thing. But the key fundamental for me initially from the CV is always going to be what's their skills, what's their experience, what can they bring in terms of that side of it. Okay. Because the rest of the process is more about understanding who you are and the other things that will either get or will either get you a position or won't get you a position with us.
Okay, so let's structure it then. So imagine we have a CV. Yeah. On the top bit, you want like you name and all of that jazz, and then do you go straight into the employment history and then go down into the education? Is there a particular order? I was never taught this in school.
I was never either. I had to make this up. And living in Germany, they do it completely differently as well.
Okay.
In Germany, you have to include a photo. Over here, never include a photo, right. Because it's in Germany they like to see you and like to understand who they are going to be talking to.
Okay.
But there is, or there can be, or some people think that it may prejudice your CV if you actually put a photo on, because people do, and it's unfortunate, but people do make a snap judgment about people when they first see them. So you'll see someone in the street and you'll make a snap judgment about who you think that person is.
Right.
And it's the same with CV. So if you include a picture, someone might make a snap judgment based on your picture. It may be that you look like a cousin they didn't like when they were younger, but that's enough for them to actually taint their view of what they're looking at. It introduces a bias that you don't need.
That is I'm very interesting.
Bit of an amateur psychologist as well, so
right.
I might end up going off a few of these sort of tangents.
No worries.
So if it's just nice, clean, crisply written, then that is all that you can be judged on initially. Okay. This is why spelling and grammar is important, because it does give a certain perception of the sort of person you are. Okay. So that's why it's worth taking the time just to make sure those are right. But the most common CV formats tend to be personal details at the top. You'll then get a brief summary quite often of the person. So this is the 50-word elevator pitch, of who I am and why you should hire me. Right. Then quite often some people will put in some sort of skills section. So they'll say, what they've been working with, and there's lots of different ways of displaying this. Some people have little slider type things next to it to show, I'm really good at JavaScript. I'm quite good at PHP. I'm absolutely terrible with continuous integration or Git or something like that. Or they'll just list the skills, or they'll put, whether they're expert or even just the time that they've done it. There's 101 different ways to format that. But that gives me a quick overview of the sort of technologies you've been looking for. Okay. And then the next thing will normally be employment history, most recent job to the top, because that's the bit I'm most interested in. What you're doing now, or what have you just done? If you've just come out of a contract or just ended your employment with whomever, and then finally you'll get down to to your education history, and then at the bottom quite often will be a little hobbies and interests type thing.
So you've just described there a priority order of knowledge and how, about that person. You put the hobbies right at the bottom. I mean, I've seen CVs where the hobbies are right at the top. And it's like
that's unless you're applying for a job at a toy store or a hobby store or something like that. That's not quite what people are looking for, unless your hobby happens to be contributing to open source, in which case you might want to elevate that.
Ooh. Yes,
but
but
that's something good to put in your personal summary. I also contribute to XYZ projects, or I run project X, or whatever. So because it's a good sales thing, because it shows that you're passionate about what you do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got the CV down. You've got a bunch of these CVs. You've made a sort of a short list of what candidates you would like to discover further. What happens next?
So quite often, certainly in terms of the process I'll probably have a quick look at the LinkedIn profile. Okay. And see, get a feel for, are there any testimonials on there? What sort of endorsements people are giving people, although being a LinkedIn user myself, I know that sometimes you have to take that with a pinch of salt. I've had people who are, I don't know that well, and I've never actually worked with, but they're kind of part of my wider network, and they've endorsed me for certain technical skills. And I'm thinking, you've no idea whether I can do that or not. So, and that's not the fault of the candidate. No, it's because of the way the system works. It's very easy, because some people just think, I know them. I'll click that because I'm sure they must be good at that because they're in my network. So testimonials I find are really good and interesting to look at, and just quite often to see who else who they're connected with and things like that. Occasionally I find that they're connected with people I know, in which case I can always ask them, this person, what did you think of them, in terms of an employee, just to see what their gut feeling is. Okay. On that. It's only happened a couple of times, and luckily it was all good things. So awesome. Which is good to know. And then it'll be a case of me talking with the team lead for whichever team they're looking to go into, and just making sure that what we're seeing on the CV kind of matches the kind of thing we want for the role. Now, like I said, technical skills, if we're looking for Vue.js and you've got good React skills, that's fine. They're transferable. We're not, you don't have to be perfect in the technology stack that we have. We wouldn't expect anybody to, because we do it our way. Yeah. Every company does it slightly differently. So, and I'll come on to something that I've read recently on Twitter a bit later on. But it's a case of, I'll chat with my team leads. If they're happy, the next step is an initial chat via something like Skype or GoToMeeting, Zoom, Google Hangout, something along those lines, so that we can start to get a feel for who this candidate actually is.
Okay, right. So that's cool. So you have like is that like a pre-interview?
Kind of, yeah.
Before they come in, yeah. I guess you want to not waste your time and not waste their time,
and also not waste their petrol and things like that as well. Because we're where we are in certainly at the Oxford office, we're just outside of Oxford. We're in a business park. It's a bit out of the way, so it's going to take them a while to get there. There's no point in them coming to us if after the first 5 minutes we're going to be thinking, do you know what, they're not a good fit for us, or we're not a good fit for them.
Sure.
Because that's another important thing is you're trying to work out both sides of the equation. Are they going to be good for us as a company, and are we going to be good for them as an employer?
Right.
I'll come on to that a bit later on as to how, because we do, that forms part of our selection process going forward. So this is a first initial chat, and the key things we're trying to find out here is we'll throw in a couple of technical questions just to see if they genuinely know about the technologies they say they've worked with. I've had some howlers in the past with people, and also you can get an initial feel for the sort of person they are, and a bit of a feel for their personality, understand what it is they're looking for from a role. We make sure that they understand exactly who we are, what we do as a company as well, and the sort of work we do, so that they are under no illusions about what they're going to be letting themselves into if we take the process forward. But yeah, it's that initial, first meeting, it's first date almost. But we try and make it as painless as possible. So, which is why we do it via video or some other conferencing type system.
Well, I guess it's really good because they are within their comfort zone, their house, wherever they are, wherever makes them comfortable. They don't have to get flustered over traffic and driving and petrol, like you said, and then sort of discover that they're sweating and all this stuff. And yeah, I've been there; it's terrible. So, I mean, how long do these things last for?
So we schedule in half an hour for it. We tend to find that's about how they generally tend to run for half an hour. Like I said, it is literally just an initial chat. So we'll ask a couple of questions like, maybe if they've said they got Vue.js experience, then I'll make sure I'm including one of my Vue.js experts, and they'll ask a question about mixins or something like that, just to just gauge their reaction. I'll ask a bit about the technologies they've worked with. So if they say they understand TDD, then I'm very, very held back and reserved and only ask one or two questions. If they say they know about continuous integration or agile, and just get a feel for the sort of things they've been doing so far as well, so that I can understand what sort of level, if we were to go forward, what sort of level would we bring them in at? What do they know? What don't they know? Where would we need to work with them to improve their skills? And just get a feel for, is this person like to be a right fit, technical and, from a personal level as well.
Now, I'm going to be asked this question through probably a Twitter DM after this, so I'll preempt it. It might be completely different for other companies in web dev, but for you at least, do you mark people down if they do not wear a shirt or a suit in this conference type meeting thing?
No. If they were sat there hanky on, knotted hanky on head, string vest, welly boots on, sat there like that, nice and not really paying attention, I probably would start to think, that's not quite what we're looking for. But as long as they're looking presentable, I don't expect them to necessarily even own a shirt and tie and suit in this day and age. To be perfectly honest with you. None of my devs generally tend to wear shirts. To be perfectly honest with you, I've got a whole mix of styles at work. I think as long as I feel that they're presentable and what have you. And like you said, the initial talk, they're probably sat at home. So you wouldn't, I wouldn't want anybody to have to put a shirt on to sit at home on the sofa with the laptop just chatting to someone who may or may not be interested in employing them. That's just too much faff as far as I'm concerned. Your mileage may vary with other companies, like you said, but certainly from my point of view, I think as long as you're looking presentable and and you come across well-natured, then I don't think that's ever going to be an issue as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, yeah, that certainly answers that. That's good. I know I'm going to get quizzed about that. The way. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, if you are at all worried about it, then just put a shirt on, But it's not something that I would ever not mark someone down for, as long as they're looking relatively smart. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. So we've gone through the process of getting someone on a conference call. How do we then progress that into getting someone into to be actually interviewed on a one-to-one? Is that the next step?
Yeah. Okay. So if I just go through our process quickly, so that we can work out where we are. So I can give you the little bar at the top with the little 1, 2, 3 to show you how long a process you are. Okay. So the initial one is obviously you send in a CV, or it could be a recruiter that comes in. I think we'll talk about recruitment a bit later on, because there's a slightly different way that sort of works. We do this initial hangout with them with a technical specialist of some sort within the field that they're applying for, so that we can just gauge a bit how they're doing. Then there's 2 more steps that we do. The second one would be a face-to-face interview. Right. That will normally be with me and the team lead for the team that they're applying for. And then there would be a final stage interview, which would be with myself and one of the exec team. Okay. Because they like to meet any potential new hires and see what they feel and make sure they're happy that they are a good fit for the company as well. We've got I think I mentioned it last time, we've got a really good team at Torpedo. We get on really well. And we work very hard to make sure that we bring in the right people to make sure that we keep the kind of atmosphere and the kind of team going that we need and we want. So, they like to give their final rubber stamp on there. And in fairness, so far, they've never turned around and said no to anybody I've presented for that stage. So it does feel sometimes more like that doesn't do it justice. They obviously are, they want to take an interest in what's going on. But it is a case of they're just making sure that I've not gone off the reservation with my choice and they're happy with it. It's,
I get that. And that's really good to hear, because it means that they themselves are invested in the process. The people. Oh,
definitely.
The execs, they're actually invested in this. Which is great. And it becomes more of a family, I guess. It's sort of like you coming on to the family, you're coming on to the team. You're one of us.
Very much so. Yeah.
So let's talk about interviews. And what are the things what are the key indicators, the triggers, the things that you go, this is a really good interview? What are the things that stick out to you?
Okay. Probably the first one, because it's sticking in my mind because of something that happened earlier in the week. Turn up. Right. We've had we had someone that we were looking to do one of these hangouts with recently, or in the last week or so, and so we got on the call. It was in Zoom, I think that one was. So we were in the room ready, waiting. 15 minutes had gone past, so we closed down, gone. No way. Didn't hear from the candidate for another 24 hours.
Whoa. That's a no.
Exactly. So, ironically enough, we're not going to be taking that application forward. So that's the first thing. If you're late, or if there's an issue getting there, just phone up and say, these things happen. I've broken down a few times on my way to important things. Life sometimes, or, if your child might be sick and you might not be able to attend. We understand, me, personally, I understand that life throws you curveballs. I've had enough of them myself. So that's never going to be an issue as far as we're concerned. I'd never mark anybody down. As long as they do the right thing and they inform us as soon as they can that there's going to be an issue. So even if it's just, they might have broken down 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So just give us a bell, say that's done. So that's the first thing. Otherwise, try to arrive a little bit early. There's 2 reasons for doing that. A, it shows a good impression to the hiring manager, but also it gives you time to sit down, relax, and collect your thoughts. Yep. Because if you've just driven through traffic, so you're frustrated, you're running to the minute, and you literally walk through the door. You don't have time to catch your breath. You're going to be flustered, and you're probably not going to do yourself justice in the way that you could do if you had that 5 minutes to sit down calmly and relax, and to just take a breath and prepare yourself.
Take that nervous loo break as well.
Yes, definitely. If you feel you need it, particularly if you're, like we're a little bit out of the way, so you know that they're going to have travelled to get to us. We always offer a cup of coffee or some water or something when you first arrive anyway, because we're a nice company like that.
Cool.
So that's probably among the first things. Other things that I look for that are particularly good are try and be prepared. There'll come a point in the interview where I've asked all my questions, I've explained a bit about who we are, the sort of things we do, and then I've offered the floor over to the candidate and say, "Have you any questions?"
Okay. Yeah.
Make sure you've got some questions, so to show that you've actually thought about what it is, because part of that is for me to understand what you're looking for as a candidate. Right. Because it's not a one-way street, it's not just, I'm not just offering you a job. I'm not just looking for someone with the right skill set and that's it. I'm looking for someone that is going to work well for us, but someone who's going to be happy in our environment and going to thrive within the offering we have. Sure. 2 reasons for that. A, it's good for the candidate. I will get my best out of the staff that way, because if they're happy, if they're challenged, if they're doing the sort of thing they love, they'll want to stay and they'll be productive and they'll really enjoy their working environment. And, we had that conversation last time about, you want to be in a job where you enjoy doing what you're doing. We want to be providing that sort of environment to our employees. So, make sure that you've got some questions. I asked a really good question in a recent interview, actually, where the candidate turned around and asked me and said, "What's the best thing for you? What is the best thing about working at Torpedo?" I thought that was a really good question. Yeah, so I'm hoping not everybody now that interviews with me asks me that question, because I've got an answer now, so I'm all right. But yeah, it was really good. Other things I've been asked before is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I never ask that question of a candidate, because I think that's the wrong tack to take. What I always ask them is, what is it you're hoping to get from this role? What is it you want to achieve? Because 5 years it gives you a specific time frame. Well, in 5 years, I want to be this, that, or the other. No, because I don't know what the business is going to be like in 5 years. I don't know what the tech landscape is going to be like in 3 years. You can't do that. But so the understanding has to be more about, where do you want to go? What trajectory do you want to be on? Do you want to just get more technical, stay on that? Do you want to branch into management? Some of the, one of the things, do you want to branch into some other area, like maybe, product, UX design, for example, or, project management, or product manager, or infrastructure, or, DevOps, 101 different things that you can possibly do. But getting an understanding of where people's ambitions lie helps me to understand, if I bring them in and they suit the skill set, am I going to be able to offer them the challenge or the type of career progression that they're looking for, which is very important. Looking smart. Okay. Again, it doesn't have to be shirt and tie, but ripped jeans, baggy t-shirt and unkept hair,
flip-flops.
It's not going to, socks and sandals. Nah, no, thank you. Actually, to be fair, I wouldn't have a problem with that personally, but I think you need to. Again, it's about this showing that you're making an effort, showing it's important to you. It doesn't have to be a three-piece suit, and you don't have to go to that extreme necessarily, unless you want to. I don't have a problem with that. I wear shirts to work every day. Occasionally I wear jeans, quite often I wear trousers. My choice. That's how I dress. So, make sure you look smart. If you've got a suit, polish it off, polish your shoes, look the part. And try not to be too nervous. Now, this is important. This is an important point to make, particularly for people that aren't used to interviewing. Yeah. Remember that the person opposite you will have been interviewed themselves. They will understand that some people are uncomfortable talking about themselves quite often, or maybe have problems articulating themselves, or are just nervous. So if you stumble over your words or anything like that, don't worry, because I can guarantee the interviewer will have done that themselves. Right. So, they will, or they should at least understand that. And this is why I try to do things more as a conversation and dialogue rather than just firing across questions. Yeah. In fact, with interviews, I always make sure that the first thing I do is give a bit of spiel about the company, the sort of work we do, and things like that, and try and put someone at their ease so that they feel like it's a conversation, it's not a grilling, And also, we don't have 5 people sat at the other side of the table,
right? Okay,
okay. Like The Apprentice, because it's because it's a conversation. It's about understanding people and what have you. So
yeah.
If you've got a bit of nerves, that's fine. But just answer the questions honestly, truthfully, and to the best of your ability. And don't worry about, if you make a slip up or something like that. I've done some real howlers in the past. I fully understand what it can be like when you're in that situation.
Yeah. And I mean, anxiety is something that just comes into play when you do an interview. And if you have anxiety, it comes into play even more. I've just thinking of some of the interviews that I've done myself, where I was the interviewee, and some crazy things that I've been asked to do. I've been asked to write a program with no prior knowledge of this test. I had to do it with pen and paper, and it included regex. And
oh, lovely!
Yeah, and it was just like, what? This is nuts. Who writes code now on pen and paper?
Well, how is that going to give you any kind of realistic idea of what they're going to be like when put in a normal situation where you have a computer, you have normally access to the internet, so to help with checking the regex at least, or maybe even a tool on your desktop that does it. Yeah. Use an IDE which will include Code Complete. Most developers, if you're a developer, your stuff, but you'll quite often use, the tools available to you to help you to do your task efficiently, quickly. Yeah. Nobody writes anything rote anymore. I've met people that can still write in assembly code, pen and paper, no problem at all. In fact, I think that you were there at the same time with a colleague of ours that used to be able to do that. So there are people out there that can do that, which is fine. It's good for them. But as a general candidate,
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So,
it was the classic. It was the classic. They gave me a pen. I was too hard, so I ripped the paper. All of that kind of stuff happened, and it just turned into a train wreck. And
it's not just that. Your mind will go blank because you're suddenly under pressure. You won't necessarily remember the commands properly. Even something, I've been asked a similar thing. I was asked at an interview to write out a SQL statement for something. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't too difficult, but all of a sudden my mind had gone blank.
Yeah.
How do I terminate SQL statements?
And then when they came back, it was almost like they were trying to prove that I didn't know things rather than prove that I did know things.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be adversarial because that's not what it is. You don't, because if you do that, you're going to breed an adversarial culture for a start, but also you're giving the wrong impression of the type of company you are, because hopefully you're not like that with your staff generally, and that's not, this is a two-way thing. This is as much about you selling your company to the candidate as it is about the candidate selling their skills to you. And you definitely don't want. I mean, we don't bother with technical tests.
Right.
There was an interesting tweet I saw a couple of days ago from Uncle Bob. So good old Mr. Martin, the oracle and font of all knowledge. And he was saying with permanent staff, the last thing they look at is the language that they're developing. Now, we can't quite go to that extreme at Torpedo because we do web development, so it has to be PHP, possibly Java, depending, if we're doing apps or, other items that use Java or JavaScript. It has to be one of those technologies. So I couldn't bring in a C# developer and expect them to be able to get on with the job. So there has to be that grounding there. But The technical side of it is kind of secondary because there will always be gaps in knowledge. There will always be things we're doing that other people aren't. You know, we do some quite clever stuff with AWS and code deploy. You know, people may never have, you know, done that before. So, you know, there will always be gaps in knowledge. Technical skills can be, you know, can be taught. People can be upskilled. That's not a problem. You know, it really is, it should be more about attitude and, you know, personality and whether or not, you know, it's a good fit for your team and you're a good fit for them and you can give them what they want. And that's generally what we try to get out of that second interview. There will be technical questions because it's a technical role. You know, there's no two ways about that. But they're not gotchas and they're never, you know, we never try and trip people up. We're asking so that we get that assessment of where are you at the moment on, you know, on that scale, on that technical scale or on your career progression. Because if you're coming in for a senior role, I expect you to, you know, to at least have a certain amount of knowledge. But also, I expect you to have a certain attitude towards various things as well, like mentorship and bringing people on, being able to do technical presentations to people, and you know, the ancillary stuff that's important for that type of role. So it's not all just technical, but I need to understand where you are on the scale so that I can then, you know, either place you where I think you would fit within the team and within the company, and you know, to make sure that, you know, you're the right person for that role. But you know, the softer side of it, you know, how people, you know, the attitude and the personality are probably as, if not more important. I would say probably more important, to be perfectly honest with you.
I was speaking to a guy. He's going to be on the podcast. I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but he's going to be on the podcast soon, if not already. And he was talking about soft skills, and he was talking about the similar things that you were saying about presenting, being confident, being able to present themselves and the ideas. But you don't have to be like the public speaker. You don't have to be the person who just breezes through and calmly and does things, and you know, everything just works. As soon as you touch something, it all works. Things break apart, things fall apart. But it's showing that you can what am I trying to say? It's showing that you can come back from that. It's showing that if for example you were doing a presentation and the laptop failed, that you can cope with that situation, and you can either discuss the things, or if you had the slides that were all printed out beforehand, that shows that you're prepared. All of those sort of things indicate that you are an acceptable candidate, and a candidate that is worth considering.
Definitely. It's certainly we, you know, things are. I mean, we are as a culture within Torpedo, we're solution led. So it is, you know, things can be as much about how you deal with something. How you deal with an issue, you know, whoever calls there, it's normally secondary. How you deal with problems, how you deal with issues can be as important as whether or not the issue was there in the first place. So I completely agree. But, you know, if you're supposed to be talking about a subject, now I don't expect even senior devs necessarily to be happy giving a presentation in front of 50 people. Some devs are just not like that, and you know, that's personal choice. I don't have a problem doing that sort of thing. I had an interesting experience when I was 15, which means I've lost any fear of public speaking whatsoever. So in fact, it's probably worth saying that because it shows, you know, how things can go wrong and how you can recover. So 15-year-old me, I was at school. We were doing a kind of a business event type thing over a weekend at another school. So there were a lot of business leaders there, and we were learning things about understanding how much it costs to make things, production, negotiating with unions was one of the things we did, which was quite interesting. How you negotiate contracts, a lot of things like that. One of the final tasks we had to do was a presentation to the rest of the school children that were there. So the whole lecture hall full of 15-year-olds and a load of local business leaders. So our team decided we would come up with a product which was some X-ray specs that we were going to try and sell to frontline services, so fire brigade, ambulance crews, police, and the business model was that there was a one-off capital outlay for the glasses, but there was a consumable you needed with it, and the idea being you'd sell the glasses, that would slow down, but the consumables would take off. Unfortunately, we didn't necessarily pick the best name for it, so I was for some reason chosen to present. I wasn't very confident back then at talking, so I stood up on stage in front of all these people with my little flip chart next to me and said proudly to everybody, "I'd like to introduce you to super sex."
Okay.
Yes. So, as you can imagine, I was waiting for the ground to open up and swallow me.
You know that's going to be a soundbite, right?
Everybody knows the story that I know pretty much. So, it's, this is the thing. I've now come to terms with it. And having done that, obviously everybody laughed. Obviously, I was really embarrassed. I was absolutely mortified. A 15-year-old boy said that in front of all these, there were lots of people in the audience, people I knew, and it was mortifying. So older me would have dealt with it a lot better. But younger me said, "Sorry, let me start that again. I'd like to introduce you to super specs," and then I carried on with the presentation.
There it is.
Right. And it went well, and we actually ended up winning that round.
Right.
Now, whether it was a sympathy vote because I'd right royally screwed it up, or whether it was genuinely because they felt it was a good presentation, a good business idea, I'm not sure. But after that, and having recovered from that, and realised that, do you know what? I'm still here. The worst that happened was I went bright red. Yep. At least people are talking about it now. It's, once you've done it once, I think you kind of realize that's the worst that can happen, that you say something wrong and maybe people laugh. And they're not necessarily laughing at you. They're laughing because you've said something that they found funny. So, once you've done that, you kind of lose your fear of public speaking, and it's a lot easier then. Older me now would have just turned around if I'd said that and said, "Well, actually, maybe I'll show you that later. Let's look at the product we've got here," or something like that. I'd have recovered a lot quicker. But when you're 15, you don't think like that.
No. You just want the world to swallow you up.
Yeah, exactly. I can always guarantee a couple of days later it came to me, I was, "Oh, I should have said that."
Yeah.
The way it does.
So in hindsight.
Yeah. Oh, hindsight is brilliant stuff. But even if someone's not happy with public speaking or anything along that lines, you would hope that someone who's applying for a senior role is at least happy doing a mentor type role and be able to do at least a technical talk to the rest of the development team, or explain some technology to some people. Explaining to non-technical people certain things, there is a skill in that in itself. Yeah, and that's not something that every dev has.
Certainly. Yeah.
You've got to be quite a specific type of person to be able to do that sort of thing. Yeah. But certainly, with the mentorship and these are soft skills that you're kind of trying to tease out of people when you do these interviews as well. So you'll probably ask, a innocuous question like, what do you think are the skills necessary to be a good senior, or something like that? Or what do you think it means to be a senior developer? And then understand, what they come back with. And you'll find there's quite often two camps. One will go down the mentorship, helping juniors along and doing that sort of thing, being a port of call if there's a problem. Others will go down you're a technical specialist, you know everything about a certain subject and what have you. And that kind of gives you an idea as to probably the sort of career direction they're going to want to go in as well.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because, the people who are talking about mentorship, they're probably going to be happy looking at maybe a lead dev or a team lead role. Whereas the other ones, you're probably thinking, right, we're going to have to push you down solution architect or, application architect or that sort of level, that type of role. If they're not, if they don't want to just stay coding the rest of their life. And some people do. Which is absolutely fine. No problem with that at all.
Yeah. But if you're listening and you're thinking of being a going into management, then do check out the previous podcast that we did about called Coder to Manager. That explains Jeremy's background and how he's progressed from, because you were originally a PHP dev, right? I mean, we won't go into the history because we did that quite a bit in the previous.
And before that, I was an IT assistant. I've done plenty of interviews, so I know the other side of the fence as well, and I know the mistakes I made, and the things that I've done that worked and done that haven't worked in terms of interviews and that. So
Okay, so is that the end of the process in the sense of you at that stage you then have an idea of who you want to hire or is there anything else after that?
So after that second interview, we'll obviously have a conversation, and then normally we'll know at the end of that whether or not they're going to be a good fit for the company. Okay. Obviously, a lot of the interview will also be about explaining what we do at Torpedo, how we work, what we can offer in terms of career progression, how we're structured as a company, and all those things to try and make sure that the candidate is actually coming in eyes open to the role. So the last thing I want is for them to turn up and then after a week they're not, they're looking for something else because it's not what we had said. Yeah. That's the last thing I want. I want to make sure that, what I'm offering, what I'm explaining about the role is what they get. I can't stress enough this whole thing about it being a two-way street, and it's as much about the company being right for you as it is for you being right for the company. But at the end of that, we probably have a very, very good understanding of whether or not, whether or not they're a good fit from an attitude and a personality point of view, but also hopefully we've got a good idea then of whereabouts they would slot into the team, where we'd need to work with them to upskill, where we think they're probably already, ahead, and, whereabouts they fall on the scale. We have quite a formal career development and appraisal process. So we do have for each job function, we have set objectives and criteria. Right. So we can offer a very structured career progression and a very good understanding of where you fit on the scale, and where if you need to improve, where you need to improve. And again, all of these are not designed to either catch people out or to say, "Hey, you're not good enough." It's quite the opposite. It's so that we've got a good way of understanding where to target training resources so that we can get people up to to fulfill their potential, basically. Yeah. As a manager, as a man manager, my man manager hat, that's my first and foremost role, is to help my staff achieve their potential and to go as far as they can go. Yeah, that's a great point about the two-way street and how you're trying to make it as comfortable for them as possible. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to mention at all before we head off? Is there anything else that you can think of in terms of the recruitment process or anything else in general? Two things that's probably worth mentioning, because I know the kind of diverse viewer base that you've got. Obviously, if we're interviewing for contract workers, and we do use freelancers from time to time, the process is very, very different. We are a lot more focused on the technical skills rather than the personality and attitude. Still important, because we don't want to upset the apple cart, but because they'll be coming in for normally a short fixed period, 3 to 6 months. We have to be a lot more thorough in understanding that their technical skill set actually matches what we need. Okay, so you'll find that with freelancers or bringing on contract workers, there is a much bigger emphasis on the technical side of things. Wow, in terms of what we're doing. And then obviously you've got the people that are coming in via a recruiter as well. So we do work with recruiters, and people's experiences will vary with them. We've had some interesting recruiters we've worked with in the past. Some of them are, like Ed, the guy that got me the position I'm in now, Nathaniel, who you spoke to what is now a couple of weeks ago, but might be even longer by the time this goes out. From SR2, Nathaniel. Good. They're good recruiters, and a good recruiter will always work out, basically do what I do on my first hangout interview. They'll actually assess who you are, what you're looking for, what sort of things, whereabouts you are on your journey, what sort of skills you have, and they'll be able to do, they should be able to do very quickly what I do, which is assess where you're going to fit in well, what you're looking for, what can be offered from various companies. Now they're kind of trying to do my job for me without doing my job for me. So I think Nathaniel has mentioned it and Ed mentioned it 'cause, we were talking about some positions the other day. Quite often you'll talk to a candidate for 10, 15 minutes. You'll know straight away which companies they're going to fit in with, which roles that they would get, no problem at all, and which ones they're going to struggle with. And it's not always because of the technical skill. It could just be because either the attitude or the personality fit would lend them, or the type of working they prefer would lend them towards one industry or another. We're a creative agency, so we do a lot of stuff is quite high pressured. We got deadlines that we have to meet no matter what. We try not to, we try not to work to the deadline all the time, but there are occasions where, if something's gone wrong or it's taken longer to do something than before, we need to pull it out of the bag, and we have those deadlines that we have to hit. If you're working for a company where you're working on an internal product, or it's only just a one product, you've probably got a very different way of working. It's probably not quite as the deadlines are probably not key. You probably have a much more formal process, or you may have a more agile, a more true agile way of working, or things like that. So different industries, different types of development work. There are lots of different things out there, and recruiters are quite good, and also letting you know about options you may not have thought about, like you mentioned before. People don't tell you when you're at school, you could be a product manager or a technical director, or whatever the role happens to be, and understanding what skills are transferable as well. A good recruiter should help you with that, because they might turn around and say, they might suggest a role and you say, well, I've never done that. And hopefully they'll then coach you and say, well, look, you've got these skills that you've learned here, you've done this here. That's all transferable. That's all stuff that you can bring to the table. That's what makes you a interesting candidate for the hiring manager. And if they're good, then they make our job a lot easier, because normally the interview process is, a few questions, understanding what they are, and you're straight away thinking, this is the perfect guy for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, the stuff that, some of the things that Nathaniel was saying was it really brought to the table how much knowledge he gets from the companies. So he's able to analyze candidates at a very sort of granular level. And I met him actually at PHP Southwest, and that blew me away. The fact that there was a recruiter at a PHP user group listening to PHP programmers. And it was just, but that was the thing. That was the thing that really drew me to his recruitment style. The fact that he has a technical mind, in the sense of he appreciates technical things. And recruitment is one of these weird things where I've had lots of experience with really good recruiters, and I've had lots of experience with really, really bad recruiters. And it's so easy to brush them with the same broad brush. But it's finding the one which works is key, and finding one that takes an appreciation into your company, and trying to discover what your company is actually trying to look for. Do you Torpedo? Do you use recruitment agents as well as sort of the direct approach? What is it, the thing that you do?
Yeah, we do. We have certain preferred recruiters that we get emails from recruiters all the time. People we've never heard of will send me CVs because they found my details on LinkedIn. They've assumed I'm the hiring manager. And luckily, we have an HR team that I can put them straight through to, and then they have to deal with it. We, like so much we do at Torpedo, we prefer to build strategic partnerships rather than just go out to the masses. So we found a recruitment agency that we use for various types of roles. So we got a preferred agency that we now use for the technical roles. We have another one that we like to use for client services roles. So we do use recruiters, and I've experienced exactly the same from this side of the table with recruiters as well. You get some like Ed who are, they take the time to talk to you, to understand the role. They're the sort of people that actually understand the technology and how it fits together. They're not developers. They're not, they don't necessarily understand, the intricacies of it, but they understand what the frameworks are and how they're utilized. And they can then, same with Nathaniel, they can then actually understand a client where their skill set lies and whether or not that's a match for what someone's looking for. But we get others where you get CVs through that you're thinking they couldn't have even read the job spec. They really couldn't have done. And you can quickly separate out the bad recruiters who are just driven by profit and just want to make as much money as they can do off the back of this. So the ones who genuinely have an interest in helping people to get into the right role, because at the end of the day, if I use a recruiter and they're rubbish, I'm not going to use them again. So it's not a good business model for them in that kind of sense. But also, I don't want someone who's come here being promised something, or even I've taken the time to interview and then find out the recruiter's promised them something that we just can't deliver on. That doesn't help. That doesn't help the candidate. It wastes their time. It doesn't help me. It wastes my time. It doesn't help the recruiter because I'll never use them again. End of. So these type of recruiters that will actually take the time to talk to you and offer up suggestions and help you get into a role. They're good recruiters, and I will if I decide to move on, no plans to for the foreseeable future, definitely. But if I decide I did want to move on, I've got a couple of choice recruiters from the last round of job hunting I did. I will only talk to them because I know that they'll do right by me. So a good recruiter, when you find one, stick with them.
Yes, it's not what you know, it's who you know when it comes to that.
Exactly.
Kind of game. Yeah,
most definitely.
Because it is like the Wild West out there, especially on LinkedIn. Like the amount of people I get, just I get asked for .NET jobs.
Yeah, I get the same. I have got it on my CV because I did a bit at Fasos when I was on one of the teams. I did a bit of .NET and ASP.NET. In fact, I think it was, if I remember rightly. But if you read my CV, it's very clear that was a tiny bit. And I get asked if I want to be a senior C# developer or a senior .NET developer. Yeah. I'm thinking, if you even bothered to read my CV, so it's just, and likewise, I get speculative CVs from recruitment agencies. Every so often, I'll get one for a mechanical engineer. I'm an advertising agency. We don't. But, we might work with automotive or with those sort of companies. We don't actually build the cars for them.
So do you get, I don't know how it works because I've never been on your side of the table, but do you just get CVs just from recruitment agents just saying, are you looking for work? Yeah, we get, I probably get 2 or 3 speculative CVs a week when we're not actively looking, and I probably get 10 to 12 speculative CVs from people when we are actively looking a week. It's absolutely mad. And that is nuts. Because do they go into a special inbox folder?
They get passed straight on to HR, who are the team that actually deal with that. Cool. And I don't. But we, like I said, we've got a preferred supplier, so we wouldn't look at any of these other ones anyway, unless we were specifically looking for a new recruiter. In which case, we might consider. But we'd probably start approaching recruitment agencies instead. Yes. Because if they're firing out speculative CVs, the chances are, and we've had this a few times actually, the chances are that candidate doesn't actually even exist.
What?
They'll send out a CV that looks like ideal for the job. Sorry, they've just taken another position. However, we do have these we can show you. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. And having spoken to a few recruiters, that is a practice that apparently sometimes happens within the industry. And this is the problem. There are some really good recruitment agencies out there, and there's some really good recruiters out there. But unfortunately, because of these cowboys that are operating within the industry as well, they start to get tarred with the same brush. And I think that's a real shame, because you do have, people that really do act, they really want you to do well, and they want you to get you into that dream position for yourself, because that's part of the reason they're in it. Obviously, they're in it to make money. They'd be lying if they weren't. But for a lot of the good recruiters, the real drive is to match up the right person with the right position and make sure that person's happy. And to be quite honest with you, the benefits of that are, for them as a recruiter, is that's what they enjoy doing. There's no denying, there are people that really enjoy that, but also it's a good business model. Because as a hiring manager, I'm more likely to go back to them because they might only give me one or two candidates, but they're one or two really good candidates that are really suitable for the role. But also, the candidates are going to go back to them as well because they feel that they've been looked after. They've been given the dream job. If they do decide to move on, in 3, 4, 5 years or something like that, when they think, do you know what, there's a bit of a glass ceiling here, let's look at the next role, they're probably going to go back to them. They're probably going to say, well, do you know what, Ed, Nathaniel, whoever it is, they did me right last time. That's I'll contact them and see what's about now.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I remember the recruitment agent who helped me get into Fast Hosts, and I have sent her a message, just thanking her generally. Just an FYI, this is what I'm doing, and I wouldn't have done it without your support. And that's great. But my head is just with what you've just said about the underhand tactics. That's just
it does happen. It's unfortunate, and like I said, I don't want anybody to get the impression that's how the industry as a whole works. But these are practices that I have seen or I'm aware of from either talking to other recruiters or talking to other hiring managers as well. You do get these occasional, or they'll tell I've had this before where we were looking for a contractor, and I interviewed someone. They seemed really good for it. Unfortunately, the recruiter hadn't bothered to tell them, despite the fact that I'd said definitely, and it's always the case with us anyway, they had to be on site. And they were expecting to work remotely, and it was just not with the type of project. It was just not something we could do.
Right.
But that was the recruiter had decided that he'd try his luck, give us a really good, dangle a really good candidate, and then assume that we'd fold and say, yeah, do you know what, he's that good.
Oh my god.
We'll do it, and it wasted my time and it wasted the candidate's time as well because they were really good, really nice guy. Yeah. It just wasn't something we could make work. And so he was let down by that recruitment agency, and I was as well.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, wow.
As Mr. Clarkson would say, and on that bombshell. Yes.
Well, thank you ever so much, Jez, for coming on, Jeremy. And, I mean, we've covered an awful lot of topics: CVs, interviews, recruitment, all kinds of good stuff. And I just can't get over that. That's crazy. That is nuts.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It really is mind-blowing.
That is madness, absolute madness that they would take the time to do that. Someone has actually had to write that false CV.
Well, the chances are they've just picked one at random from someone that looks like they match and send it through, because you can guarantee that the candidates they do have, and this is the kicker, the candidates they do have aren't really all that suitable. It's just a foot in the door for them, because it's surprising how often it happens. Or I mean, it's because they'll send it in, you'll respond within an hour, and somehow they've got the job in an hour. Now, if it genuinely is the case that they've sent you a CV, they should know that their candidate has another offer that they're about to accept.
Yes.
If they're good, or they should at least know that they're already in advanced talks with someone else. And that's the other thing with a good recruiter. They'll quite often ask you, is this the only role you're going for? What's going on? Always be honest about it, because it helps the recruiter understand, where they are as well. Because if you're about to get a role and it sounds like a better role than the one that they've got that they could offer to you, a good recruiter will turn around and say, well, look, I did have a role for you, but it sounds like you've got a better one. However, if anything doesn't work, if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, let me know, and I'm more than happy to put you forward for this one. Well, that's and also understand which recruiters are putting you forward for which role. Right. I've had 2 recruiters put me through for the same role. Okay. One of which was fully with my knowledge. The other one, I obviously didn't know. Otherwise, I'd have turned around and said, actually, I've already got a CV in with that company.
Right.
And I've given to understand that it's happened before where someone's applied directly and then a recruiter has put a CV in for the same person. And it's sort of like, they've done it without the candidate's knowledge, which is a no-no. It's a definite no-no. It's not actually allowed as far as I know. It's very, very bad practice.
Yeah. This is the bad, the
dark side of recruitment.
Side where, I don't want to say it, but a lot of us just think that we do get treated like a resource,
If you find the right recruiter.
Not if you find the right recruiter.
If you find the right recruiter, you won't be. The same as if you find the right company as well, you won't be.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, at a very technical, basic level, you are a resource because you are the person working on that project. But any good company worth their salt they won't see their staff as a resource. Or if they do, it's a resource they want to grow and nurture. So it's not that. And this is the problem. There are connotations now with words because of these bad practices that have been going on in the industry and what have you, which is a shame, because there's nothing wrong with resource management or human resources or something like that.
No, that's true.
As long as people are still treated like people when it comes to the day-to-day running and their career development and everything else.
That's true.
If they're a resource on a project, but they're still a person, and as long as you get that right, it's just a word at the end of the day.
It is. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Hey, we're programmers. Naming things is difficult. So.
It's one of the worst things. If you want advice, read Clean Code. I'll tell you all about naming and commenting and why it should and shouldn't be used. But it is 95% naming things, 5% actually writing the code to make stuff happen.
Yeah. Right. Well, anyway, I know that you're super busy, and I'm going to have to shoot off and grab some dinner. But thank you ever so much for coming on, Jez, and talking about this. And your experience is invaluable. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of people asking loads of questions, so I will filter them out, and perhaps we can have a little chat later and discuss this even more. There's lots of tangents that we could
do a Q&A session maybe.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. Well, happy coding, everyone. Thank you ever so much for watching on the YouTubes and listening on the podcasts. One thing I will say before we go is if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel. Also, do check out the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, it's on iTunes, Spotify, and all the other podcasty related places. But thanks for watching. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.